The stars were quiet, or so the Talari believed. Their world was soft compared to others, filled with green plains and wide rivers that shimmered under a gentle sun. The Talari were not a warrior race. They grew their food, built tall crystal, towers, and shared songs during their nights. To them, the universe was vast but peaceful. That peace ended when the sky itself opened. The machines came without warning. They did not speak. They did not demand. They only consumed. They fell upon Talari ships in the outer system, tearing them apart with perfect precision. The Talari navy, made of small patrol crafts and trade vessels, stood no chance. In a single sweep, the machines burned through everything in their path. The Talari Council gathered in fear. Elders with silver eyes sat in their chambers, their voices trembling. Some called for surrender, though none knew if machines could even accept such a thing. Others cried for escape, but the stars were too wide and their people too scattered. At last, one elder whispered the only path left. Send a signal. It was not a weapon, not a fleet, only a message. A beacon sent across the void, carrying a simple plea. We are falling. Help us. The council did not know if anyone would listen. Perhaps no one would hear it at all. Yet they sent it anyway, a last act of hope before the darkness closed. In. The signal traveled through dust clouds, through ancient ruins of forgotten worlds, and across cold space where no light had touched for ages. For a long while it seemed lost, but somewhere on a planet wrapped in storms, where lightning struck oceans and winds tore across endless lands, the signal was caught. This planet was known to the galaxy only in whispers, a world too dangerous, to tame, a place of predators, poisons, and shifting earth. A death world. The people of this world were called humans. On Earth, the signal was received by a listening post deep in the mountains. A young operator, weary from long hours, watched the strange rhythm flash across her console. At first she thought it was noise, a stray pattern made by the stars. But then the words unfolded, translated by careful algorithms. She read them slowly. We are falling. Help us! Her voice shook as she passed the message to her commander. Within hours, the call spread to the highest councils of humanity. Generals, scientists, and leaders sat around a wide table. They read the plea again and again. To many other races in the galaxy, such a message would be ignored. Why risk fleets and lives for strangers? The machines were known even to human explorers. They were ruthless, endless, and feared. But humans were different. They had grown strong on a planet that fought them every day. They had learned to survive storms, quakes, fire, and famine. Where other species avoided struggle, humans had lived in it since the first breath of their kind. The council debated for only a short while. Some spoke of risk, some of loss, but none denied the truth of their nature. Humanity had been called, and to them, a call for help was never empty. A decision was made. Ships would be prepared, soldiers would be trained, supplies would be loaded. Humanity would answer. The Talari did not know it yet, but their signal had reached the one people in the stars who would not turn away. They had called into the darkness, and the Deathworlders had heard. The Talari slept in fear that night, watching their skies burn with streaks of machine fire. They believed they were alone, small and powerless. Yet far across the void, human, engines roared to life. Iron hulls glimmered under hangar lights, and voices shouted orders with steady resolve. War was coming, but so was help. The signal, simple as it was, had carried more than words. It had carried trust, desperation, and hope. And for humanity, that was enough. In the heart of Earth, deep beneath stone and steel, a chamber stood filled with light. Around a wide table sat the Council of Humanity, leaders chosen from many nations. Above them, A great screen played the signal again and again. The voice of the Talari echoed through the room. "We are falling. Help us." The air was heavy. Some leaned forward with sharp eyes, others sat back with folded arms. The call had reached their ears, but the question was clear. Should they answer? The first to speak was an elder admiral, his uniform lined with medals of old battles. His voice was steady. "We know these machines. They consume without reason. To stand against them is to invite loss. Yet if we do nothing, another people will vanish. Is that what we choose?" Across from him, a minister shook her head. "We must protect our own. If we send fleets far away, who will guard Earth? Who will stand watch against threats that may come tomorrow? The Talari are strangers to us." The chamber filled with murmurs. Some agreed, fearing to risk their strength. Others frowned, uneasy at the thought of ignoring a plea for help. Humanity had built its power through hardship, but also through bonds. To turn away felt wrong. A young commander rose from his seat. His voice was not loud, but the chamber quieted. "We are children of a death world," he said. "We learned to live because we never turned from struggle. Every storm, every fire, every trial, we faced them, not because it was safe, but because survival demanded it. If we ignore this call, what does that make us? Are we still the people who endured everything our world threw at us? Or have we become something weaker?" The room grew still. His words carried weight, for they were true. Humanity was not known for caution, but for resolve. A scientist spoke next, her hands folded on the table. "I studied the machines. They adapt quickly. They copy and improve. Every race that faced them alone has fallen, but if we stand with others, if we join strength, perhaps the tide can be turned. Alone, no one survives. Together, we may endure." One by one, voices joined the debate. Some warned of sacrifice. Some spoke of hope. Some remembered old wars where humanity had stood alone and how bitter that struggle had been. Others remembered how allies had turned the tide when they chose to fight side by side. Hours passed. The chamber lights dimmed as the sun set above the world. At last, the head of the council stood. He was a man of quiet bearing, his face marked with years of service. His eyes swept the table, then lifted to the screen where the words still glowed. "We are falling. Help us. History will remember what we choose today," he said. "The Talari called not because we are their kin, but because we are their last chance. We can send our fleets and we will lose lives, that is certain. But if we stay silent, then we choose the death of a people who asked only for aid. I say humanity does not turn away. I say we answer." The silence that followed was brief. One by one, voices gave assent. Not all agreed, but the decision was made. Humanity would rise to meet the machines. The news spread quickly across Earth. Workers in the shipyards labored without rest, welding steel and fitting engines. Factories burned with light through the night, producing armor, weapons, and supplies. Families stood at docks to watch soldiers march aboard their ships, their faces proud but heavy with worry. In orbit, the fleets gathered. Great carriers drifted, beside smaller escort craft. Their hulls bore scars from old battles, yet their cores burned bright with new purpose. The flag of Earth gleamed upon them, not as a mark of power, but as a promise. The Talari still watched their skies in despair, unaware that help was on the way. They did not yet know the nature of the people who had heard them. To the galaxy, humans were still a mystery. Some feared them, some dismissed them, but few truly understood them. Now the galaxy would learn. For in the dark, where others turned away, Deathworlders had chosen to step forward. Their might was not born of conquest, but of survival, of stubborn will, and of an old truth that had shaped them since their beginning. When a call is heard, it must be answered. Engines roared in silence of space. The first fleets moved toward the stars. Humanity had decided. The Talari skies had grown heavy with fear. Every day, more reports came of colonies falling. The machines moved like storms of metal, burning fields, shattering towers, and leaving only silence behind. The Talari fleet, once proud of its trade, roots and crystal ships, had been reduced to scattered survivors fleeing from battle after battle. In their capital, the Talari Council met in sorrow. Their leaders stood in tall chambers of glass and light, their voices echoing with despair. "We sent the signal," one elder said, her silver eyes dim. "But there has been no answer. Perhaps no one heard. Perhaps no one dares." The chamber was silent. They all knew the truth. Even if someone had heard, what race would risk facing the machines? The swarm had destroyed powers far greater than the Talari. To stand against them was to invite the same fate. Yet far beyond their system, unseen engines burned. Human fleets were already on the move. They crossed the void with steady pace, their vessels built not with elegance, but with raw strength. Their ships were forged of heavy steel, reinforced with thick armor, armed with weapons designed to survive the most hostile battles. Where? Talari ships shone with crystal light. Human ships looked like beasts of war. The first to arrive was a small strike group led by the carrier Resolute. Her hull was dark with scars of old conflicts, her engines blazing like fire against the void. Around her flew escorts, frigates and destroyers with cannons bristling. They did not glide gracefully like Talari crafts. They marched forward with a will that could not be broken. The Talari sky watchers saw them first. Their voices shook as they reported to the council. "Unknown ships entering system. They do not match machine signatures. They are human." The council gathered at once, watching through great view screens as the strange vessels appeared above their world. The Talari had heard of humans, whispered tales from traders and distant scouts. A people of the Deathworld. A race known for their reckless will. Some called them dangerous. Others called them unpredictable. None truly knew what they were. Fear gripped the chamber. "Are they here to conquer?" one elder asked. "Do they come to claim our world as their prize?" Then a voice came through. The comms. Deep, steady, and plain, it carried no threat. "We are the fleets of Earth. We came because you asked." The council froze. Their hearts lifted, but doubt remained. Could these humans truly stand against the machines? The Talari leader spoke carefully. "We thank you for your presence, but you must know the swarm cannot be stopped. Many before us have tried. Why risk yourselves?" The human reply came without hesitation. "Because you called for help. That is reason enough." The Talari chamber filled with quiet. For the first time in many cycles, they felt something other than fear. The humans did not wait for more words. They began moving at once, sending patrols to guard Talari skies, deploying engineers to reinforce defenses, scanning the space lanes for enemy signs. Their presence filled the system with a strength the Talari had never known. But the machines did not give them time. Only days after the humans arrived, alarms sounded across the colony of Lithra, a world rich with harvest plains. The swarm descended in waves, their ships sharp and countless, black against the stars. The Talari defenses panicked. Their small patrol crafts fled before the enemy could cut them down. Citizens cried out, believing the end had come. Then the human fleet moved. The carrier Resolute led the charge. Cannons roared, spitting fire across the void. Frigates broke into tight formations, cutting paths through the swarm. Where the machines struck in endless numbers, humans met them with stubborn defense. Shields flared, hulls groaned, but they did not retreat. From the ground, the Talari watched as the sky turned into a storm of light. For every machine that fell, another seemed to appear, yet the humans fought on. Their ships burned, but did not break. They moved not with grace, but with resolve, as though each strike was a promise to hold the line. When the battle ended, the swarm was gone. The machines had pulled back, leaving only wreckage in their wake. The colony stood, scarred, but alive. The Talari could not believe it. Never before had the swarm been pushed away. They gathered in the open squares, their voices rising in disbelief and joy. They looked to the skies where the human ships still glowed. In that moment, the Talari learned something they had never known. The machines could be fought. And they learned something greater. The Deathworlders had come not as conquerors, but as guardians. The colony of Lethra slept under a calm night sky. Farmers rested in their homes, crystal towers glowed softly, and rivers shimmered beneath the stars. Yet peace did not last. The warning came without mercy. Sirens blared, red lights filled the streets, and voices shouted through comms. The swarm had returned. From the sky, the people saw it. Shapes of black metal cutting across the void, countless and merciless. The machines moved in perfect silence. No banners, no signals, only their endless advance. The Talari had seen this before. Always, it ended the same way, with fire, ruin, and despair. Panic swept through the colony. Families rushed to shelters, council guards prepared to evacuate, and many believed this was the final moment. Yet above the planet, human fleets stirred. The Resolute sounded her call. Engines roared, shields flared to life, and cannons primed with power. Frigates broke formation, destroyers spread wide, and escorts moved to guard the colony skies. Talari, watching from their towers, saw the humans act with a confidence they could not understand. Where the swarm appeared as an endless tide, the humans saw only a challenge. The machines struck first. Streams of energy poured from their ships, burning through space. Drones rushed forward, small and swift, swarming toward the human lines. The Talari covered their faces, unable to watch. But the humans did not retreat. The first wave crashed against the frigates. Shields flickered, hulls shook, yet the ships held steady. Cannons answered with thunder. Heavy rounds tore through the swarm, scattering drones into sparks. Plasma fire split the void, carving open machine vessels. Where one ship fell, another human vessel filled the gap, refusing to yield. The Talari Council, watching from their chamber, could not believe their eyes. "They are not fleeing," one elder whispered. "They are holding the line." In the colony below, children stared through shelter windows as the night turned bright with fire. The humans fought above them, every strike a shield against the storm. But the swarm did not stop. More ships poured into the system, a tide without end. The machines adapted, shifting formations, targeting weak points. One human destroyer, Valiant, took the brunt of a focused assault. Her shields broke, her hull cracked, and flames burst across her decks. The Talari cried out in sorrow, believing the ship lost. Yet even as Valiant burned, her crew fired their cannons to the last. Their sacrifice bought time for the Resolute to reposition, leading a counterattack that tore through the machine flank. The swarm faltered. For the first time, their perfect rhythm broke. The humans pressed forward. Frigates darted into gaps. Destroyers blasted wide paths, and the carrier unleashed her strike wings. Swarms of human fighters shot into the void, small but fierce, weaving through enemy fire to strike at machine cores. Explosions rippled across the darkness. On the ground, the Talari felt hope rise. Never had they seen the swarm pushed back. Never had they witnessed an enemy stand so firm. The humans fought not as scattered ships, but as one force, every vessel covering the other, every move filled with unity. At last, the swarm began to retreat. Their vessels pulled away, their drones scattered, their fire dimmed. The machine tide, unstoppable to all others, had been broken. The colony of Lethra stood. The fields were untouched, the towers still rose, and the people still breathed. When silence returned, the humans spoke once more. "The battle is won, but the war is not over. We will stand with you." The Talari Council listened in awe. They had expected saviors of shining crystal, or perhaps conquerors of cold hearts. Instead, they found protectors forged by hardship, warriors who carried the weight of sacrifice, yet pressed forward without fear. That night, the Talari gathered in their squares. They lit fires of remembrance for the human ship Valiant, honoring those who had fallen for a world not their own. Their voices sang, not in despair, but in gratitude. Children looked to the stars and whispered of the Deathworlders who had stood for them. Farmers spoke of new courage. Elders spoke of a future no longer filled with only fear. The machines had struck, and for the first time, they had failed. The Talari now understood the meaning of resilience. They saw it not in their own kind, but in the humans who had come from a world of storms, fire, and struggle. A people who answered calls not for gain, but because it was right. The first battle was over, but the war had only begun, and the Talari knew they would not face it alone. The skies above Lithra were calm once more, but silence carried weight. The humans had won the first battle, yet the cost was visible everywhere. The Valiant lay broken, a blackened skeleton against the stars. Smoke drifted from its shattered hull, and the survivors floated in escape pods, trembling from the shock of what they had faced. The Talari gathered to watch. They had never seen such bravery before, nor the consequences of standing against the swarm. Children clung to parents, pointing to the floating wreckage. "They risked everything for us," one whispered. Elders nodded, sorrow in their eyes, understanding that victory always came at a price. Commander Roken, captain of the Resolute, floated among the damaged fleet, speaking to his officers. "We cannot forget those who fell. Every ship, every life is a part of this fight. We survive only because we honor their sacrifice and learn from it." Repairs began immediately. Engineers worked in silence, welding, replacing, recalibrating. The humans moved with urgency, knowing the machines would return. They did not rest, even as exhaustion clawed at their bodies. Each moment of delay could cost lives on the planet below. Talari scientists approached, watching in amazement. They had never built ships like these. Their crystal vessels gleamed and floated, fragile but beautiful, yet they lacked the strength, the resilience, and the flexibility of the human fleet. The humans could take hits, adapt quickly, and continue fighting. That was a lesson written in fire and steel. The Talari also witnessed the humans' care for the survivors. The wounded were carried carefully to medical ships, tended to with precision. Each life was sacred, no matter how small or insignificant. The Talari had never seen such devotion, for they often prioritized efficiency over empathy. Yet the humans taught them that strength and compassion could coexist. Even as repairs continued, the humans trained. Pilots practiced maneuvers in the void, learning how to anticipate the swarm's attacks. Soldiers ran simulations on the ground, preparing for boarding missions. Each human understood that survival required constant effort, constant vigilance, and constant courage. At night, the Talari approached the humans with questions. "How do you endure so much loss and keep fighting?" one elder asked. "Commander," Rokan answered simply, "we endure because we have no choice. Our world taught us that survival is not given. It is earned. We fight for each other, and for those who cannot fight. That is what makes us strong." The words struck the Talari deeply. Their own culture had long focused on preservation of self and order. The humans lived by a different code, one of persistence, of facing danger head-on, and of risking all for a cause greater than oneself. But the cost of war weighed heavily on both races. Talari civilians tried to return to normal, But fear lingered in every street. Farmers worked their fields with wary eyes, and children were reluctant to play. The humans did their best to reassure them, but even the bravest could not erase the memory of fire raining from the skies. The council convened. Again, this time with humans among them. Together they reviewed the battles, studied the swarm's patterns, and prepared strategies. The Talari began to contribute their knowledge of local systems and tactics, while humans offered experience in combat and endurance. It was a collaboration born of necessity, yet it carried a deeper meaning. They were learning to trust each other. Commander Rokan observed the council and the colony. "Victory is not enough," he said to his second-in-command. "We cannot fight only with strength. We must fight with wisdom, and we must remember the lives lost. Every victory has a price, and that price teaches us how to survive the next challenge." As the sun rose over Lethra, the smoke of battle still drifting from orbit, the humans prepared to launch patrols once more. The fleet had learned from the first encounter, and every pilot and soldier understood that the swarm would strike again, more cunning and more ruthless than before. The Talari, once paralyzed by fear, now stood with cautious hope. They saw the humans not just as warriors, but as teachers of resilience. They realized that even in the darkest moments, courage could shine, and so the night ended, leaving a lesson carved in steel and fire. Survival demanded sacrifice, but those sacrifices built a strength that could not be broken. Humanity had paid the first price of war, and the Talari had begun to understand that the true cost of fear was inaction. In the quiet hours, as stars reflected on the calm seas, both races knew one truth. The next battle would come, but they would face it together, stronger than any one world alone. The morning sun rose over Lethra, casting long shadows across fields and towers. Birds sang, rivers glimmered, and yet in the skies, the threat of the swarm loomed. Reports came from distant sensors, movement among the stars, the faint glint of machine hulls preparing once more. The humans did not wait for attack. They acted first. Commander Rokan gathered his officers on the bridge of the Resolute. "The swarm will return, stronger and smarter. We need tactics that they cannot predict," he said. The officers nodded, their faces set with determination. The humans had spent the last cycle analyzing the enemy. They studied the swarm's formations, their attack patterns, and the weaknesses in their coordination. Where others had seen an unstoppable tide, the humans saw opportunity. They developed plans that combined speed, deception, and relentless firepower. Talari scientists watched, astonished. "How do you think of these maneuvers?" one asked. Commander Rokan smiled. "We learned on worlds that do not forgive mistakes. When every day can be your last, you learn to use what you have and turn danger into advantage." The humans called their plan the hammer and shield. Frigates would strike the enemy head-on, drawing attention and fire. Destroyers and fighters would flank, hitting weak points in the swarm. The carrier would stay in the rear, coordinating attacks and keeping reinforcements ready. Every ship had a role, every movement planned with precision, yet flexible enough to adapt if things went wrong. The Talari began helping. They provided local maps of asteroid belts, energy fields, and orbital currents. Humans listened carefully, blending their strategies with Talari knowledge. It was a collaboration unlike anything the Talari had ever seen. By the next cycle, the swarm struck. Their ships descended in tight formations, black shapes blotting the stars. Alarm bells rang across Lethra, but this time fear was tempered with confidence. Humans and Talari stood ready. The first wave of frigates charged forward, shields glowing, bright. Energy fire from the swarm struck them, shaking hulls and sending sparks into the void, yet they held their line. From the flanks, destroyers darted between the enemy, striking at exposed engines and weapon arrays. Fighter squadrons weaved through the chaos, small and fast, cutting apart drones with precision strikes. The Talari watched from orbit and from the ground, astonished at the human coordination. Ships did not fight alone. They moved as one organism, every action supporting another. They adapted instantly to the swarm's changes, turning retreats into traps, weaknesses into counters. In the middle of the battle, the Resolute engaged directly. Cannons roared, beams tore through enemy formations, and shockwaves rippled across the void. Commander Rokan directed every movement with calm authority, predicting the swarm's actions before they could react. The tide began to turn. Machines fell faster than they could replace themselves. Some attempted flanking maneuvers, but human destroyers were already waiting, ambushing with heavy fire. Fighters dove into enemy lines, weaving through weapons fire to deliver critical strikes. Talari citizens cheered in their homes and streets. They could not join the battle, but they felt its rhythm and hope in every strike. Humans were not just surviving, they were winning, teaching the Talari that fear was not the only response to danger. Even with victory growing, the humans remained cautious. They moved slowly through the system, clearing remaining drones, rescuing stranded Talari pilots, and repairing damaged ships. Every victory was measured and precise. No life was wasted, no opportunity ignored. When the battle ended, the swarm had retreated far beyond the system. The humans did not celebrate loudly. They repaired, prepared, and analyzed. They knew the war was not over. Commander Rokan addressed both crews and Talari leaders. Today we won because we worked together, because we adapted and endured. Tomorrow, we must do it again, and we must do better. The swarm learns, and so must we. The Talari realized something new. Humans did not rely on luck, luckless courage, or magic. They relied on planning, observation, and determination. They were not invincible, but they were unstoppable when united. On the ground, children ran to the top of hills, watching ships glide above. Farmers and workers spoke quietly of hope, and elders, who had lived through decades of despair, finally smiled. They had seen something extraordinary, a race that turned hardship into strength, fear into action. The humans had taught the first lesson of war in a new way. Strategy and courage together could overcome even the darkest enemy. The swarm would return, yet now the Talari had allies and confidence. They had learned that victory was not impossible. As the sun set, fleets regrouped, repairs completed, and night fell over Lithra. The stars sparkled like diamonds, and somewhere beyond, the swarm prepared. But the humans were ready, and the Talari had hope. War was not over, but they were no longer alone. The stars over Lethra burned cold and distant, but the air above the colony was alive with movement. The swarm had returned, larger and faster than before. This time they carried not just weapons, but intelligence gleaned from their earlier defeat. Every human and Talari heart beat faster. The final battle had come. Commander Rokan stood on the bridge of the Resolute, his hands steady on the controls. Around him, the fleet was assembled, every ship in position. Destroyers lined the flanks, frigates led the center, and fighters danced in patterns above the main fleet. The Talari ships hovered close, adding their unique energy shields and sensors. Together they formed a shield around the colony, unbroken and determined. "Remember your training," Rokan said. "The swarm adapts, but so do we. We fight for each other and for this world. We fight for hope." Below, in the colony, Talari citizens watched the skies with wide eyes. Children held the hands of their parents, and elders whispered prayers for courage. Even in fear, the humans inspired confidence. They did not panic. They moved with precision, purpose, and determination. The swarm descended in waves, black ships blotting the light of distant stars. Energy blasts tore through space, lighting up the void like fire. Drones swarmed toward the frigates, trying to break the human lines. The humans responded instantly. Cannons fired, shields flared, and fighters darted into the swarm. The Resolute led the charge, her weapons cutting paths through the enemy tide. Every strike was precise, every move calculated. The Talari watched, astonished. They had never seen anything like it. Human ships moved like a single living force, anticipating the swarm's attacks and countering with strength and strategy. The machines, deadly and relentless, had never faced such coordination. The battle raged for hours. Ships fell on both sides. But the humans pressed forward, refusing to yield. Destroyers rammed through weak points, fighters struck at enemy cores, and frigates held the center. The swarm tried to retreat, but the humans adapted, surrounding them and cutting off escape routes. In the middle of the fight, Commander Rokan piloted the Resolute directly into the swarm's main formation. Cannons roared. Beams of energy tore through enemy vessels, and explosions lit the darkness. Every crew member acted with skill and courage, showing no fear despite the danger. From the ground, the Talari saw sparks and fire dance across the skies. They realized that these humans, these Deathworlders, were not just fighters. They were legends in the making. Every movement, every sacrifice, every daring strike spoke of resilience and courage beyond imagination. Finally, the swarm faltered. Their numbers could not withstand the human strategy and the combined Talari support. One by one, enemy ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. The fleet of Deathworlders held the line, and the impossible had been achieved. When the last drone disintegrated in the void, silence fell. The humans did not cheer loudly. They observed, repaired, and accounted for every ship and crew. Lives were lost, but the victory was complete. On the surface, the Talari gathered in the squares of the colony. They lit fires in honor of the fallen, both human and Talari. Children pointed to the skies, remembering the bravery they had witnessed. Elders spoke of hope reborn. Commander Rokan addressed the Talari Council and the citizens below. Today we defended not just this world, but the future. We have shown that courage, strategy, and unity can overcome even the greatest threat. Stand tall, for you are no longer alone. The Talari listened, their eyes shining with admiration. They understood that the humans came from a world of hardship, a world where survival demanded strength, intelligence, and heart. They had brought that power to Lethra and taught the Talari how to face darkness without fear. As night fell, ships returned to orbit and repairs began. The humans worked tirelessly, tending to the wounded and rebuilding damaged vessels. They moved with quiet dignity, honoring the cost of victory and preparing for any future threat. The colony of Lethra had survived. Its people had witnessed the might of humans, the Deathworlders who answered a call for help not for glory, but because it was right. Their courage had turned despair into hope, and fear into determination. From that day forward, the Talari would tell stories of the humans who came from harsh worlds to protect them. They would remember the battles, the tactics, and the sacrifices. They would never forget how Deathworlders stood united, fearless, and unstoppable. Commander Rokan looked at the stars, thinking of home, of battles won, and of those who would not return. He felt pride, not only for his crew, but for humanity itself. They had faced impossible odds and triumphed. They had shown the universe that the Deathworlders' might was not only in their strength, but in their courage and unity. And above Lethra, the stars shone a little brighter that night, as if the universe itself recognized the triumph of humanity.